Good evening, my name's George from Big Gay Knits. My pronouns are he, they, and today we're going to talk about the 7 things that I learnt from stash busting in 2025. So in 2025 I decided that I was going to go on a yarn buying ban, and I wasn't going to spend any money on yarn until I had used up every single thing that was in my stash. But I'm going to go through the 7 things that really stood out to me. I did a little reflection at the end. It took, I think, from January to the kind of end of April to get through everything that I wanted to get through for me to do that. Okay, the first thing I learned was that I love using up odds and ends. I love it so much. It really scratches something inside my brain where I'm just like, yes, this is the most satisfying thing. So if I can use up a whole skein of yarn, or the other thing that I really loved doing was going to the craft swap, getting random bits and bobs of yarn and making it into something completely. I made a lot of hats, let's just say that I made a lot of hats. Making it into something that's just like using stuff in a really creative way really satisfied the urge that I have for both like reusing stuff and also like using stuff up to the very last, which is why this channel is focusing on using it up in 2026. So that's the first thing. I made this amazing houndstooth beanie hat pattern. It was the first time I'd ever done colour work, and I made it using yarn of like incredibly different weights. So it was like some DK, some like light fingering that I held double, some like chunky, some Aran weight, and like this real hodgepodge of just like anything that I had that was in brown and cream. And I was like, right, everything in the craft swap, what have you got? Got it all together and then just decided I'm gonna make this hat like I did stripes to the brim and then the houndstooth beanie pattern, which was a free pattern I got in Ravelry, and I loved it. It was so satisfying to make, and I made it and I was like, this is truly like, I'm like, I've peaked. That was like the best thing ever. I really enjoyed making that. I really enjoyed the process of thinking about what I could do with the yarn that I had, so that was really satisfying to knit. Another thing that I made in 2025 was vest number 3 by My Favourite Things Knitwear. That was using yarn that entirely came from a craft swap that I went to, and then that has now found a new home with someone who also goes to that craft swap and to my local Woolly Club group. So yeah, those are the 2 things that really stand out for me that I made out of like the tiniest odds and ends and like making it work. So yeah, I felt very kind of like 1940s, like make to amend things. So yeah, really enjoyed that. The second thing that I learned is that I really like to knit socks. I really love socks. I find them very satisfying to knit. They're very quick to knit. I've got a pattern that I really like, and I do toe up now rather than cuff down, which I think is vastly superior. Sorry, all the cuff down lovers. So I really like to have a sock on the go, and I found that when I didn't have something like really mindless to knit that I could just do that was like pure autopilot, my fingers know what they're doing, I know what I'm doing with this, that I really struggled, and it felt too hard, because I do like to do some knitting that's again like this whole thing about like the mindless knit, isn't it? So like the mindless knitting versus like the really complicated thinking about it, like really intense technique, or like colour work charts and stuff. So I really appreciated having a sock on the go all the time. And I did definitely indulge in some very bougie swish hand-dyed sock yarn when I was done with my little no-buy in 2025. The third thing that I learned from trying to use all of my yarn stash in 2025 was that I don't like to do test knitting and I find it very stressful. So my friend, his sister has a pattern company called the Fairy Thorn, and she very kindly sent me the Falmore River socks to test, and I test knitted those, and it was an all over lace pattern in a sock, and oh my goodness, I'd never knitted lace before. I was like, well, it's a sock, how hard could it be? It was my first toe up sock, it was my first lace knitting, and I was like, oh my god. And I picked like the weirdest yarn because I was out of like basically everything. So I had a Corriedale mohair blend. It turns out I'm allergic to mohair but don't worry about that because I shrunk the socks in the wash. So if I've yeah, my friend's dog has a little picture of him wearing the socks that I made for that test knit, because they ended up like this big. They were so tiny after they come out of the washing machine, and I was like, oh, gutted, can't put that in the wash then. So yeah, so I found test knitting really like battled with the like obviously a little bit neurospicy in this corner. As I'm camouflaged in the green, and I found that really set off my PDA type, so like demand avoidance or drive for autonomy, shall we say, and I found that so hard to deal with, being like, I should be doing this, this is the thing that I have to do, that's an obligation now, and it completely killed knitting for me, completely killed the vibe. I was like, oh, I'm not doing this because it's a fun project, I'm doing this and I need to think about it and like give feedback, and also it's hard, it's really hard. I have to say though, finishing the socks and like, oh my gosh, the satisfaction I got from completing something that I found so hard, and also looking back on it, like having done a test knit and been like, yeah, okay, cool, I test knitted, great, that's the thing that I've done now. I think, yeah, I learned so much from that process, so I'm very thankful to Kira for that. Like, thank you so much for letting me test knit, but it's not for me, and that's okay. I'm not a test knitter. I just like to do my own weird stuff and have my own fun with my knitting. Okay, so number 4, and this was a massive thing, was to plan my projects first. So I'm not very good at planning and I don't like doing it, and I think the desire to have something like new and shiny really weighs out on things, and I think I needed to think a bit more about what I wanted to do and when I wanted to do it, so that I didn't end up doing, for example, 3 back-to-back jumpers with no socks in between. And I think that would really help me balance the knitting that I'm doing. So this year I've tried to think ahead about, because I was thinking when I finish this in April, I kind of want to do it again next year, just to keep the stash in check. So yeah, so I was thinking ahead of time, what do I want in, what am I going to knit, and it has definitely changed the way I think about my knitting and how I plan my knitting and what's important to me. So that's been very helpful to have, is the knowledge of what do I like about knitting, what things inspire me, what things don't inspire me, what can I do that will really like satisfy the creative curiosity. So yeah, so project planning and like thinking ahead a little bit more. Not to say that there can't be a completely spontaneous project, and I'm sure that there will be, and I love that for like the little bits and bobs of like random stuff that I knit up, but I think to be really satisfied with a project I need to plan it a bit more. The 5th thing is that I really like to have about 1 to 3 works in progress at a time, or WIPs. So if I have any more than that, I think at one point I had 8 or 9 WIPs, and that was really stressful. I was like, I just constantly felt like I was behind, and I know that that's not a real thing and you can't be behind in a personal project, but I think my brain puts a little bit of pressure on me and is like, oh, you've got 8 things on the needles right now, so you should probably get on with like one of those. And then it kind of was like, oh well, I don't want to do that one, oh I don't want to do that one, oh I don't want to do that one either. So I really found that sticking to 1 to 3 WIPs has been very helpful for not getting that overwhelmed sense, but also having the like, I'm fed up with this and I want to change it up now. I think it's also given me more confidence as well in my decision making, in terms of if I'm not enjoying it and I don't want to knit it anymore, I'm more willing to say, okay, that's it, I'm done. So that's also been very secret bonus aspect there, that's been really good. The 6th thing that I've learned from doing this process is to think about, what do I actually want to wear? Because as much as it's fun to knit hats, I've only got one head. Other people in my life have only got one head. Once everyone's got a hand knitted hat, how many more hats do you need to kind of have? So I think that was the thing about thinking, actually, what do I need in my wardrobe? And this is where some of the things, like the projects that I've got in mind, the projects that I've mentioned in my other video, so for example the cream Aran sweater that I want to make and the red jumper as well, are both things that I think I would really get a lot of wear out of in my wardrobe, and I would really like to make those. Also, it's not green. I do love green, but there's a limit to how many green jumpers one man can make, and I think I might nearly be there. Well, not forever, but like at least for the next couple of months I might be there on my green jumper. Watch me turn around and make a green jumper in like 2 weeks time. So yeah, so I think I want to think about what I want to wear. Do I need any more socks? Probably not, but I do like knitting them, so I guess it's like slowly rotating through the stock stash. Although I have unpicked some of the first socks that I ever made, because I've got really tiny feet and they've gotten smaller. So yeah, that's been a wild ride. Like my shoes aren't like not fitting. Basically, I used to be very chunky and I lost a load of weight, so that's completely like neutral. I really liked how I looked when I was bigger, but it does mean that my feet, which are already size 4, and now like, yeah, definitely you can't wear the same size socks that you used to. They just slide right off. So I have unpicked the yarn for the green socks that I made that were too big, and I'm going to reknit them. The sock knitting context, I knit about 48 stitches around, or sometimes like 52 stitches. I think usually people make like a 60 stitch around, but I think again I've got quite loose tension. So yeah, so it's a 48 stitch sock, which does mean that I finish them really quickly. So everyone in my group's always like, how have you done that? And I was like, because I knit them and they're smaller and I don't go very high up the leg because that annoys my ankles. The 7th thing that I took away from this process in 2025 was, quite annoyingly, that slowing down makes it better and not worse. I have an inner speed demon and I really like to knit things very fast, and I want to make it done like now, because I've already like planned to have that item, so then it's like the annoying awkward period where I have to actually, you know, make the thing that I want. So yeah, but slowing down makes it less stressful and like you enjoy the process more, you get less frustrated with it. I found that I got less frustrated with it. So yeah, it's really hard to keep that in mind, and I really struggle. That's a complete battle that I have all the time about slowing down, like versus trying to do things as fast as possible. So yeah, so I'm trying to chill out a little bit on the knitting, think about things a little bit more. I think I had like a big wave of just wanting everything. I just wanted to make everything. I wanted to see what I could do, see how things went together, like get an understanding of like what colour work was, and like sock knitting and garment knitting, and what different fibres were like to knit. And I think I needed to just get that out of my system a little bit and then come back and think, what do I actually want to wear? What do I actually want to make? Where in the Venn diagram of those two things does that fit? Like, of things I like to knit, things I like to wear, I need to go in the middle of that. So yeah, I think that's been another major takeaway, is just slow down, and actually it's your hobby, it's not a race. I wrote that in a compassionate letter to myself. Slow down, it's not a race. You're not being judged, you're not being graded on it. The only person that has to enjoy the thing is you. You get to enjoy your life and your hobbies. And as I like to say, it's just yarn, it's not the end of the world. So yeah, those are my main takeaways from trying to use up my entire yarn stash. That, and I have some very patient friends who had to listen to me whinge about not being able to buy yarn. That was a whole thing, and thank you guys for putting up with that, because it must have driven you absolutely bonkers. Yeah, I really appreciate you sticking with me. Yeah, I think the other thing that I have been thinking about is the relationship that I have between like consumerism, making things, and like knitting being a hobby that consumes a material good. And I think like there's definitely a lot in there, and people have been more eloquent on the subject than I have, but there's definitely a thing around like making your own things. For me, I got really deep into like sewing my own clothes back in 2016. So my goodness, 10 years this year. And I just made a huge amount of stuff, a huge volume. And then I ended up with all of these clothes, and I was like, oh, when I make something, it stays made actually. And I needed to think about that as well. So I think this is like the knitting equivalent of my sewing realization, that actually the stuff I make like continues to exist. So yeah, I do enjoy the ability to kind of frog and reknit for yarn, and I have done that with a couple of projects already. Like one of the first jumpers that I made out of I think it's Pebble Haze. My friend made a jog jacket out of it, and I was like, oh my god, I'm obsessed. Maybe it's just because I really love Hank, I don't know. So I was like, I need that in my life, I need those colours, and it's like really cute, like blue and white, and like pink variegated blown yarn. So yeah, so I made this absolutely horrendous jumper out of it, and I was like, oh, that didn't work out very well. So I frogged that, and then I've reknitted it into a jumper that I actually really like, which, surprise surprise, is in fact the Step by Step sweater by Handmade by Florence, which is a free pattern on Ravelry, and I highly recommend it. If you're going to knit a jumper for the first time, that is the one you should go for. There might be another video on that. Let me know if you want to hear my thoughts on those things, which, you know, other people have said, but it's interesting to think. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you're working on, because I really like to know what people are knitting up or making or doing. I hope you're having a lovely day. If you have enjoyed this, please drop me a comment or a like, or thank you so much for people who've subscribed already. That's been like wild. I really didn't think that anyone would actually see these, so thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. Have a lovely day. Cheerio, bye.